Welcome back again, Mark Sargent, and this time we will talk about the customization solutions regarding to the buttons of ZBrush. Now, you can customize your hotkeys and many other things, but honestly, I don't recommend it at the early stage because if you change up your hotkeys, there's a chance you might well hard to get used to various settings in the learning phase. So it's better if you train yourself to use the default hotkeys and learn where your buttons are at the beginning. And once you're familiar with the tools you're using the most, then you can tailor your ZBrush settings, including the hotkeys and everything, for yourself. Now, but right now, just take an overview about the options for customizing. Now, because my screen is resized for this record, I have a tendency to adjust the button size. Now, if you have a laptop or a smaller screen and you want to save some time and save some screen space, then you can go up here at the preferences and within the uh, interface you have a button size value. Now, the default value is 48. 44 works fine for me, and 40 is also pretty good on laptops if you have a smaller screen. So it's a quite handy things to adjust. But when you're ready, you have to restart ZBrush. Now, the other thing that's quite handy if you are initializing ZBrush time to time. Now, ZBrush has a tendency to flood the memory, so you have a palette, and once too many things are loaded in here, too many models, you're changing variations, and it is there's a chance if something is lagging, and it might crash. So if you are using this in ZBrush time to time, it is just a good way to um, prevent these kind of crashes. This is actually a restart. Some people like to use it, some don't. You can actually go and restart or use init ZBrush, or you can just reset the configuration here, and that means it will reduce the number of the tools. But technically, the best option if you just simply restart ZBrush. Okay, now about customization. The customization we're talking about here is about the buttons. So you can go up here to preferences, and it looks like you adjust it at the custom UI or interface, but no. You are adjusting the buttons at the config area. So open up the config, enable customize. It will open up areas to handle, and now you can fine-tune your solutions. Now, I have already this light placement here, so it's not a default one, but let me start with the typical first approach. So for example, in the brushes, you have a clay buildup or move brush that you use frequently. Now, move brush is a good option, so let me select the move brush by using Control and Alt. This is the secret hotkey for customization, and drag this onto this shelf. Now, as you see, the shelf is automatically adjusts itself. So if you have a larger button, this shelf will be larger. But by default, you have no influence on the size of the shelf. So if you want to use 2 rows of brush buttons, like you want to put this clay below the move, it is not working this way. There's another shelf, but if you want to keep it on this shelf, you have to trick ZBrush somehow. You can even overlap these 2 buttons. This is quite nasty. Now, I like to use this large indicator here that's actually coming from the light source. So this is the light setting. You can adjust the angle of the light, but this is a matcap gray, so there's no influence. Let me switch to a basic material, and now, because basic materials are reacting to the light, So I can drag this and drop it here. I don't need this one, so I will drag it and put it on the workspace, and when I'm releasing it will disappear. So if you want to delete a button, you can do it this way. But right now, what's the benefit? I have this large button here, so I have plenty of room to put more content to the side. Now, what is the typical thing you want to do? So first of all, there are many useful options within the subtool, but subtools, it's kind of pain in the ass, sorry for the words, but when you are working in a geometry level and you have to modify something at the subtools, it's not so comfortable to always go back in the subtool, select something else, do an operation, then scrolling down, open up geometry, and then adjust your things. So definitely you want to use this duplicate or delete, insert to insert new item, and copy and paste. Okay, another important stuff is the rename. Let me change the order, so rename is also a good option. So once you have selected a subtool, so you can select a subtool like this, you can hit on rename. It was a shirt, I will keep it as a shirt, so escape. But you can copy, paste, duplicate, delete these things. It's really handy. Another option, so what to do next, for example, from geometry, you might want to look to the subdivision levels. Okay, think of these buttons as indicators of change. So if you don't know how many subdivision levels you have, or do you have it at all, then it's a good idea to put this slider out here because it gives you a hint. Okay, so if I'm walking up and down in resolution, so how to walk down, Shift D and D up, now I can instantly check it and see it. So I can use the slider or just view the change when I'm using the hotkey, and that's a good way to recognize if you have resolution at all. For the same manner, because many of the operations require you to delete or freeze your subdivision levels, I like to use this delete lower and the delete higher buttons used. Now, okay, so freeze subdivision levels, I don't like to use this feature at all. It's not my favorite. So you can keep it. It's quite a wide button. You can use it here, but right now I will not call it. Now the other thing from this range is, of course, Dynamesh. And the Dynamesh setting, because if it's turned on, so if you have a model, for example these boots, and you're turning on Dynamesh, no, we don't want to freeze it, we just want to convert it. Now it's a Dynamesh. So when you select a model that is not a Dynamesh, this button will be turned off. If you select something that is a Dynamesh, because it's still, okay, just tapping is not working, so in this case just let me select it by the N subtool palette. It's quite handy. Sometimes this tapping is just stops working. Okay, so Dynamesh is another important part. From Dynamesh, Control Alt, drag resolution. Resolution is also an important part. Let me put this Dynamesh lower. So now I have a Dynamesh resolution. It's not a subdivided model, so it's if you bunch up these things, Dynamesh, when Dynamesh is active, of course resolution will be active. When you're using some kind of a different model, so it's a poly model, of course Dynamesh is not active, so you have these values highlighted. It's kind of a good things to put them together and see how these are changing. Okay, now what else? Of course we want to use modify topology and a couple of splits. Now for for splits, we also have project and extract, so it might be good to put it out. Now, if you haven't used splits, let me show what splits is. So here is the vest. Shift F will show the vest, and if I'm isolating the vest, like using solo, and I want to Control Shift and select only these faces and change the polygroups, so I can change the polygroups as I wish. Ctrl W, then there's a chance I can remove the back of this area. Now there are no parts, so there I cannot use the split, but if I'm going into the geometry, I have a subdivision level, so now I can use delete lower, and this way I can go into modify topology and delete hidden. So when I hit delete hidden, and I'm leaving the solo mode, and even if I'm pressing Ctrl Shift and drag or tap or whatever, I cannot switch back because that back part is deleted. So if you want to use your model and you want to use only one particular part of your model, you can always select an area. Now it's highlighted, and you can go here and delete hidden parts, and that will just remove everything else that's not visible. So it's a good thing to do and good thing to use, delete hidden. Now about the splits, if you have, just let me put, I was talking way more details about delete hidden, so let me put this outside. Close holes, that's also a good option, so delete hidden, close holes. And a mirror weld. Mirror weld is also very useful feature. So let me change the order by using mirror weld here, or no, I will actually use it somewhere else. There's a reason. So let me put delete hidden and close holes here, and because mirror weld works with something else in pairs, so I will use it there. Now what about the splits? So subtools, and if you have a model, for example, what about a couple bolts? So let me select just the body, make it solo, so just the body is visible, and I want to create a couple parts like BI, IM parts, a couple rivets like this one, and let me drag it out. Multiple subdivision levels, okay, delete lower, I don't want to keep it now, and let me create a couple items, so a couple bolts here. Now these are looking quite funny, and what to do if you just want to split these parts, because right now these bolt heads, these caps are part of your body, but if you want to separate them, how to do it? Now this is the situation when a split becomes handy. Let me Ctrl drag to remove the mask, and there's split to similar parts and split to parts. Now split to parts will split up everything. Split to similar parts will count the number of the points of your models. So if you're using split to similar parts, okay, it will create a bunch of the screws, because these are technically the same. The size is not the same, but the topology, the structure is the same. So it's quite obvious that you have a group split, so you can also use, for example, this guy has multiple polygon groups, so you can use this as let me just testing it, group split, and it will break up this guy, so now you have separate hands and feet and everything like that. So this group split is also a nice thing. Split hidden, if you have something that's hidden, you can use that split, so then split hidden becomes handy, so everything that's not visible will be splitting up. So now I have one part of the leg, the other part that was hidden is split. So that's a separate model now. So split to similar parts is useful, and split to parts are another very useful option. Okay, now what about this mirror and weld? So I have a single leg, for example, and I want to mirror and weld this guy. Now, if I'm hitting on mirror and weld, it will be at the right position, because right now, if you take a look, let me switch to a different brush, BMV, and right now, because this leg is his actual right leg, it's pretty easy to hit mirror and weld because right is mirrored to the left side. Now, but when you have a body part that's on the opposite side, for example, this leg part, which one is on the, it's coming from his left leg, then if you're hitting mirror and weld, there's nothing really to turn. Now, in this case, you have to walk down and use the mirror first. And this is why I like to use and drag this onto my custom user interface. So Control Alt, drag mirror, and put it here. And in normal workflow, you're just hitting on mirror and then mirror and weld, and here we go. You have the double. So you can do it with an eye, or if you are messing up things, that's a good thing to do. Now the other option, if we are ready here, Unify is also a cool feature to use when you are importing something into ZBrush. When you are creating anything, so for example, you're inserting a new model, a new sphere. This new sphere is by default is a good sized, well-sized sphere. But if you're importing something from the outside, or you're working on a separate file in a different version of ZBrush or whatever, when you are importing your or inserting your tool into your list of subtools, there's a chance that the sizing is not matching. So in that case, you will use Unify first. Now Unify is not working for this model because it's already placed well, or it is sized well, but Unify can solve many problems later on. So keep in mind, use it and put it below the mirror. Now from this set, there are many good options, but you cannot put everything inside here. But one thing that I suggest to use is a polish by groups or polish. So polish by groups is a good one. Right now I will use just a simple polish. It is just softening up your the features. So solo mode, let me select this shirt. So Alt tapping on shirt, make it solo now, and let me use the polish feature. So I can polish it as I wish. Now it's a good thing to have at hand. Alright, so if you have something jaggy, you want to use this polish. There's even another secondary version to use the polish. If you are using the circle and closing the circle by tapping on it, that will use a different algorithm. So in that case, the outline will shrink. It's because of the it will be much harder, much more seriously polished. Okay, so that is another good option. What else you want to put it here? What comes into my mind is the ZBrush area and the projection area, because you are quite often reprojecting your stuff. Now, so it's not a necessity. These are the main things that I like to use, but still, from geometry, the ZBrush might work. The most important is actually the ZBrush button. So of course you want to put it somewhere. Keep groups. If you have multiple groups, you want to use it. So let me go to solo mode, select this shoulder pad, the shirt, backpack, shoulder guard. Okay, so here we go. This is the shoulder guard. And if I want to recalculate the ZBrush, I want to turn on the keep groups, because this is not on purpose. These groups are not pretty good, but we can keep them. Why not? Of course, we need a target polygon count. That's another very important feature. So let me lower the target polygon count below 1 and keep groups is enabled. So let me hit ZBrush. And now I have these 3 polygroups. There's a keep groups options there. Polygon count is quite optimal. It's relatively low. So this way I kept the content. Now when you are using the ZBrush, usually you are reprojecting your details. So if you have a figure like this, let me select the figure. This is the head. Go to solo mode. And if I want to reconstruct this head, I have no subdivisions, so I can create a couple of subdivisions. So it's a quite high resolution now. If I want to remesh this head for nothing special reason, because probably it was a Dynamesh, so let me turn it to a Dynamesh with a higher resolution. Okay, no, I don't want to keep this. Shift F, so it's a really dense Dynamesh. Now there is a reason I want to keep and convert it into a ZBrush, so I can duplicate this model and change the layer order. So this duplicated model is on top. Let me turn off Dynamesh. I can keep the polygon counts a little bit lower. ZBrush. Let me see what ZBrush does in this case. Okay, it takes some time because we have plenty of polygons. So 2700. Okay, the ZBrush is working. Now I have 2 models, so let me turn off solo mode and shift on the eye. So right now nothing is visible. I'm turning back on only the model below. So now I have an overlap. So there's a high resolution model, this one, and there's a low resolution model that I've created with the ZBrush. And what I'd like to do is to build up the levels. So I can just go in the project area and use this project all button, this big button. I will put it here. So project all will project onto the visible surface. So this is why I was turning off everything. This is why I was using the shift tab on the eyes to turn on and off everything. Once you turn off everything, then you can turn back on the only thing you want to keep below your ZBrush model. Now I can hit Ctrl D to subdivide the ZBrush model with 1 level. Subdivision 2 is there, so it's a good hint. I can hit again Project All and Ctrl D again. Subdivision 3, active points indicated here, and Project All. And now I have 67,000, and I can turn back off the original one. Shift F. And now I have the subdivision levels I want. So if I want to pose my corrector or change something, then I can use the lower subdivision. If I want to crank up things, I can use the higher subdivision. So let me BMV the move topological brush. In this case, my ZBrush is a little bit messed up, so if you're pressing BMV, your version will use the standard move. But right now it switches to move topological for me. So you can adjust things as you wish. So if you want to create dramatic changes, usually the technique is to use the lower resolution. Use a large brush, make the changes, and then you can crank up and look for the higher details. Now this way it's much faster, especially if you have 1 million polygons. Now because there is not much polygon count here, you don't have to worry about this too much, but as you see, because I was using on a higher resolution, there's some fold marks appeared. Okay, so this projectile ZBrush stuff is working here as 1 unit. The group split and the polish are here. The mirroring features and the reset, the deleting and closing is visible there. Okay, if you wish, you can use the extract. Extract, remember, is a good option to make everything visible. to, let me click on this side. Extract is a good way to create armor, so this is why we like to use it. I like to use these couple features, so let me put this extract here. And smoothing is good to have. Thickness is definitely a necessity, and we also need a double. We also need a sept. We can put it below, and if you want, you can keep the border, but it's up to you. So you still have room if you want to use some kind of another thing. So let me select this guy, Ctrl D to subdivide it. Once we have some subdivision, then we can create a high resolution mask. So control and masking, and then extract. This will give a preview, and if you wanna, yeah, you can click on double, extract again. Now preview is there. If you're satisfied, you can hit the sept, and here we go. That's going on inside and outside in the model. Clear the mask, and here you have a pad. Now if you want to polish this up, you can use the polish feature and soften up the edges. If you want to keep the edges but polishing the feature, then you can even put it here. There's another thing that's called deformation, and within deformation there's polish by groups. So if you're using polish by groups, you will keep the edges around. You can even turn this off and polish by groups, and now this will be much stronger. So if you would like to keep this, you can put it right below the extract, sept, and now you have polish by groups instantly attached to the extract. Okay, so these are just a couple ideas about customization, and right now this custom thing is still enabled. If you want to delete anything, again, you're just holding down Control and Shift, and you can drag it into. Now don't be surprised if you are using a button that's already used somewhere. There's only one, and it mirrors the function. So if I'm using my polish groups, it will be highlighted here and it will be highlighted there. So it's the same button actually, just has two appearances. So if I'm using this polish feature because it was the first, it will be there. Of course, mirror, unify, that's also indicated. If you are working and switching workstations, then you can use the load and save function. So you can go on up here at preferences, and as you see, you can save UI and load UI. Now when you're done with the customization, you can turn off enable customize, but it will not keep your adjustments. So if you really want to keep your adjustments, you will have to go up here into preferences and hit on store config. Now as you see, if it's often used, we have the Ctrl Shift I. Okay, so Ctrl Shift I will reinforce the config. If you don't like your configuration, you can restore the standard user interface anytime. Now these adjustments might speed up your work. It's up to you. Once you have a workflow that you like to use and use it often, it's a good idea to customize your stuff. But you can also use brushes instead of these features. So if you want to use them, you might want to use them at a different area. But my suggestion is not focusing on the brushes, but focusing on this select drag, so these kind of tools, because you're not using the pin codes for all these many of the times, especially if you're a beginner, because you're not using these quite often. So for trimming and clipping and whatever, it's quite easy to remember that, okay, you have a pinch brush, BPI, that would be a pinch, BIN, that would be an inflat. It's relatively fast to use them, so you don't have to use icons. But if you're using special controlling masks, for example, mask curve, mask circle, or whatever, then you might want to separate the mask and selection tools for that somewhere. Now, that's it about customization. And don't forget, if you're satisfied with your customization and you want to keep it, hit on store config. Thank you very much. See you next time. Goodbye.